Alright, this lesson is on subject-verb agreement. Now we know that a complete sentence must have both a subject and a predicate. If it's missing either one or both of those, then it's an incomplete sentence. So a sentence must have both a subject and a verb. The subject is going to be the noun in the sentence, and the predicate's going to be the verb in the sentence. It's also important in that complete sentence that the subject and the verb agree, that is, that they go together. And we're going to learn how they go together, or how they must agree, right now. Alright, so we have the subject-verb agreement thing, right? What is that exactly? Well, it's really pretty simple. Remember, we have to have both a subject and a predicate. We know a predicate is always a verb in a sentence to make a complete sentence. Now, the subject might be singular, and if it is, then the verb must also be singular. And that's subject-verb agreement. Or the subject of the sentence may be plural. And if so, then the verb must also be plural. And that, my friends, is subject-verb agreement. Alright, so we know that subject-verb agreement just means that if the subject is singular, then the verb must also be singular. So what are some examples of subjects that would be singular? Well, how about dog, or cat, or school? Okay. Those are singular subjects. So what would be some examples of singular verbs? Well, believe it or not, runs, gives, eats are examples of singular verbs. Now notice that singular subjects do not end in S, right? Pretty simple. However, verbs are just the opposite, okay? Singular verbs almost always, at least in the present tense, end in S. So that's the opposite of subjects. So what would that look like in a sentence? How about if we said the dog eats his food. Our singular subject is dog, and being that subject is singular, it must take a singular verb. What does the dog do? The dog eats. Right? This is a singular verb. And again, singular verbs end in S, right? And this is a singular subject. That is subject-verb agreement. Let's take a look at another one. The cat runs up the tree. All right, what's the subject in this sentence? If you said cat, that's correct. And that is a singular subject. So it must take a singular verb. Runs is a singular verb. Why? And again, notice that singular verbs almost always end in S. And again, this is subject-verb agreement. Now, sometimes the subject in the sentence will be plural. So let's use the same nouns or subjects we were using before, but this time we'll put them in their plural form. Dogs and cats. Notice how when a subject is plural, almost always ends in S. Or it might end in ES, or it might end in IES, all depending on the word. Okay? But again, almost all subjects, when they're in their plural form, end in S. Okay? And there are some exceptions like children, family, women, all right, things like that. And there's only a few, but most of them end in S. Now notice, plural verbs, right, do not end in S most of the time. What do the dogs do? Right, the dogs run. What do the cats do? The cats climb. Okay? No S for plural verbs. So it's just the opposite of subjects or nouns. Again, when we put a noun into its plural form, we add an S, or ES or IES. But plural verbs, no S. Okay? No S. All right? So let's see what that looks like in a sentence. The dogs eat their food. What's the subject in this sentence? Correct, dogs. And that is a plural subject. Notice that it ends in S. Remember, plural subjects must take a plural verb, and that is subject-verb agreement. Notice that the plural verb is eat, does not end in S. All right? And again, that is subject-verb agreement. Very good. Let's take a look at another sentence. All right, let's try a sentence with cat. The cats climb the tree. All right, what's the subject in this sentence? Correct, cats. And notice that that subject is a plural subject, ends in S. We have more than one cat. What do the cats do? They climb. Again, for our subject-verb agreement, if the subject is plural, then the verb must also be plural. And again, notice how this plural verb does not end in S. All right, let's do a quick review. Singular subjects usually, all right, really most of the time, all right, do not end in S or ES or IES. Okay? And there are some examples. Like say bus. Bus is a singular subject and that ends in S, but most singular subjects will not end in S. Now, on the other hand, singular verbs, okay, again, usually, really most of the time, they do end in S, ES, or IES. So it's the opposite. Singular subjects do not end in S. Singular verbs do end in S. All right, opposite. Okay, just remember that. And then with plural subjects, again, plural subjects most of the time, almost always, do end in either S, ES, or IES. However, plural verbs do not end in S, ES, or IES. All right? Plural subjects do end in S. Plural verbs do not end in S. So they're the opposite. And again, this is going to be most of the time and in the present tense. When you're in the past tense, then it kind of changes, right? But for now, just remember that in the present tense, subjects and verbs agree, but they are the opposite in terms of whether they end with S or do not. Okay, now there are other verbs that take either a singular form or a plural form that you'll see a lot that are a little different. All right, they don't necessarily either end with S or do not end with S. So I'll give you an example. Singular verb is. What would the plural of is be? If you said are, you're correct. Another singular verb, has. And the plural of has is correct. Have. Or another one, was. And the plural of that would be were. Okay? So again, just kind of pay attention to these. Most of the time when you read a sentence, and if you plug in either is or are, you're going to know which one sounds right. Right? Or has or have, or was or were. Okay? But if you can, just try to remember these. These are singular, right? And these are plural. So let's take a look at what those would look like in a sentence. All right, so here's an example of a sentence where the subject is singular. So it must take a singular verb. So again, singular subject must take a singular verb. And remember, is singular. Here's an example where the subject, dogs, is plural. So we have a plural subject. Remember, plural subjects must take a plural verb, right? That is subject-verb agreement, right? Plural to plural. And remember that the plural form here is are. All right, makes sense? The dogs are hungry. Wouldn't make any sense if you said the dogs is hungry, because is singular, all right? And dogs is plural, must have a plural verb to go with it. All right, now that we've learned about subject-verb agreement, let's take a couple sentences here and see how we do. So in this sentence, the chickens blank for the food. We know that chickens is the subject, and we know that that is a, that is a plural subject, all right, because it ends in S, chickens. Does that take a singular verb or a plural verb? Correct, that takes a plural verb because that's our subject-verb agreement. Plural subject takes a plural verb. And in this case, the plural verb is run, because remember what we said, plural verbs do not end in S. So how does that sentence sound when we've plugged in our plural verb? The chickens run for the food. Awesome, we did a great job there. All right, let's look at another sentence. The dog blanks when it is hungry. In this case, our subject is a singular subject, so it must take a singular verb. Question is, barks or bark? Which one of these is a singular verb? If you said barks, you are correct. So let's plug that in, our singular verb, and let's see how our sentence sounds. The dog barks when it is hungry. Excellent. Now if we had tried to put bark in, let's see how that sounds. The dog bark when it is hungry? No, that doesn't sound right. The dog barks when it is hungry. Much better. And another sentence. This one says the cat's blank tired. Our subject in this sentence is cats, and we know that cats is a plural subject. So it must take a plural verb. Again, that's subject-verb agreement. Question is or are? Which one of these is a plural verb? If you said are, you are correct. And if we plug that in and then read our sentence, it should sound right. The cats are tired. Again, cats is plural, so our verb must also be plural, and we know that are is a plural verb. Good, let's do one last one. And last sentence, the dog blank a red collar. Our subject is dog, and we know that that is a singular subject, so it must take a singular verb. And again, that is our subject-verb agreement. Singular subjects take singular verbs, plural subjects take plural verbs. Question is has a singular verb or is have a singular verb? If you said has, you are correct, and if we plug that in and read our sentence, it should sound right. The dog has a red collar. Again, if you go back and look at all of these, plural subjects take plural verbs, singular subjects take singular verbs. And remember that plural verbs do not end in S, singular verbs do end in S. Just the opposite of what we usually do with subjects or nouns. So hopefully everyone had fun learning about subject-verb agreement. Again, the thing you could always do if you're not sure is just use the verb in a sentence, kind of say it out loud to yourself, and whichever one sounds right, probably right. But if you're a little confused or if you're not certain, just remember that plural verbs take plural, or plural subjects take plural verbs, singular subjects take singular verbs. Also remember that plural verbs do not end in S, singular verbs do end in S. Okay? Well, thanks for learning. We'll see everyone next time.